All right, welcome back to another episode of Big Guy Fantasy Sports Fantasy Football Consistency. Your host Bob Long, Big Guy Fantasy. Always happy to be here. On the other side of the glass, it's been a week or so for him. Good to have him back, Ron Rigney. Ron, how's it going down there in Florida? A lot
Doing
warmer.
good. Doing good. Had our first little cold snap of the season. So that,
Oh, all the way down to
yeah,
60?
yeah. Actually, it was low 40s this morning.
What?
So it doesn't compare
Wow.
to the snow you guys got up there. But
Yeah,
one
no.
one one thing that kind of means though is it's we're getting closer and closer to every year. It gets cold. You know what that means? That means it's iguana freezing season pretty soon. Those frozen iguanas will be falling out of the trees by the bucket loads. So get ready
So
for it. Get your
this is a
helmets out.
this is actually a thing?
It's actually a thing. So we
Oh my
have,
gosh.
down here, because as you know,
Right.
Florida is kind of its own planet, universe, whatever you want to
Sure.
call it. We have a
Right.
lot of species that are not necessarily native, but have been introduced here. One of
Sure.
those is iguanas. And one of the things that happens with the iguanas is when it gets freezing, and we do have a couple of nights
Yeah.
during the year where it
Sure.
gets underneath 30, they will actually freeze and they just stop where they're at in their tracks. And if they are in a tree, you could have maybe a 2 or 3 foot frozen iguana potentially fall on you. So if you're in an area where those are prevalent, which is a couple areas down here that they are, I'm not making this up. They'll
I,
actually, because they tell
that's
they
why I'm
tell you if
laughing
you
because I
see
know
one,
that. Yeah.
they tell you if you see one on the sidewalk during when it's really cold like that, leave it alone. It's not dead. Once it gets a little bit warmer, it thaws out. It comes back to life.
So you're not supposed to like bring it in the house and let it warm up so it'll
Nope,
be
you're
okay.
supposed to just leave them where they're at, and then
And
once it
that.
warms up, he just kind of gets right back into what he was doing.
But if it falls in your head, then
If it falls on your head, that's going to be a
that's
nasty
gonna,
little bump you're going to have there.
yeah, it
Yeah.
is. Yeah. I wonder if they would wake it up on the way down. I don't know. Guess it depends on how cold it is.
Yeah.
Interesting. All right. Well, there you go, folks. Something you learn something new every day on
You
this
did.
show. Not
You did.
the consistency of frozen iguanas. It doesn't get any better than that. Um, we don't have any frozen iguanas. Not a lot of things freeze up here because they're used to the cold. So basically, my backyard is a buffet for all the squirrels because I have all kinds of acorns laying everywhere. So it's always fun to watch them, kind of lay them all out and eat them all up on my sidewalk or my like porch and the cement porch in the back. So, but the one thing that was exciting this week, the people from the cultural center reached out to me and said, "Hey, are you doing your event on Sunday, August 15th?" And I'm like, "Yes, I hope to God I am." And that would, of course, would be what the Midwest Fantasy Football Expo. So we are hoping and praying that all this stuff will all get cleared up and we'll all be back to as much normal as we can. And we'll be doing the Kings Classic live at the Pro Football Hall of Fame and the Fantasy Football Expo the next day on Sunday, August 15th. So if you're out there thinking about setting your social calendars, make sure you block out that weekend, fantasy football folks, for Canton, Ohio, and we will start talking probably about that after the first year. Hopefully, vaccines will kick in and life will get back and we'll all be good. So, but in the meantime, make sure you put that on your social calendars. You will not want to miss that. So, all right, we just finished literally an hour ago. Finished week 12.
The
For
week that
those
would not end.
the week that would not end. Yeah, I kept thinking, how far can they push this out? Can they just run two Thursday night games? One counts for last week, and one counts for this week? Hard to tell. But the Ravens and the Steelers played. I got some good points out of Juju, so helped me win some games this week, especially in Kings Classic. So that was nice. Still fighting for a playoff spot there, at least in one of them. I know you're doing well as well. Am I right?
Slipped up a little bit this week. I'm still sitting pretty in Kings Classic Snake. I really needed a win in Kings Classic Auction this week. And so when we start talking about these inconsistent players on my team, when we start talking about the
Mm-hmm.
positions, I'll be sure to call them out and let you know who exactly kind of let me down. But I will say, when you go against somebody that had Tyreek Hill this week,
Oh,
there's not
God,
much
yeah.
you're going to be able to do against that.
No. Yep. That happened in my Yahoo league, my league I actually won the championship 2 years ago, and was in second place going into this week. I'm still in second place, but yeah, I lost by 30, and
Yeah.
he had Tyreek who had 52, so
Yeah.
that didn't help.
Which
So
before we
yeah,
move on real quick, for the Wednesday game, I have a piece of trivia for you. You want to see? I learned this today on the way home listening to the game on the radio. I want to see if you can pick this out. So
okay.
in the last 70 years, the NFL has had 2 Wednesday games, and that's counting today. There is one player that played today that has played in both of those Wednesday games. Who is it?
Both of the I don't even remember the last Wednesday game.
I didn't either until they mentioned it, so I didn't know this either until they said the answer.
So my thought is, you said 7 years?
70 years.
Oh, 70 years.
2
Oh,
Wednesday games in the last 70 years.
7
Somebody that
years.
played today has played in this one and played in the other one as well. So they played in both.
I'll go with Roethlisberger because he would have been around. I'm assuming this may have happened in 2001 with the whole Twin Towers things. I may be completely wrong, but that's what I'm going to go with.
Okay, not Big Ben. I'll give you a hint, see if you can get it from this. The last
Okay.
time that we had a Wednesday game, it was the Giants and the Cowboys that played.
Giants and Cowboys that played. Boy, Giants and Cowboys.
And this player played for the Cowboys in that game.
Gosh, I don't know this answer.
Okay, Dez Bryant.
Oh, I forgot Des even played
I know, I
for
never would have
Baltimore.
thought that either, but they started talking about him and they pointed that out today, and I was like, wow,
So
that's a really interesting little tidbit.
that is, and
Yeah,
again, learn something between frozen iguanas and Des
I'm telling
Bryant.
you,
It doesn't
I'm
get any
telling you.
better than that. So why did they play a Wednesday game, and
They
when
did that.
was
See,
it?
they didn't get to that part, and I didn't have a chance to look it up. Like I didn't look up the year
Okay.
or anything. So that's the next thing I'm going to do when I get off here is find out exactly why there was a Wednesday game played. But I think because I don't know how many years Dez has been in the league. I don't know if it's 19 yet or not. I can't remember what year he was
Hmm.
drafted, but I was thinking 9/11 as well. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I I thought they played football that week. I don't remember them postponing any games, but my thought is it had to be some kind of weather related something,
Hmm.
hurricanes. I mean, we've had some postponement for hurricanes, but not Dallas or I guess maybe one could have been going up to New York, or maybe there was a big snowstorm and they were supposed to play Monday night. I don't know. The only thing I could think of, because I mean, why would Dallas is kind of way off, not way off, but away from the shores for any kind of hurricanes or issues like that. But who knows? So okay, all right. Well, get more learning beyond belief, and now we're going to learn about the consistency of our players that are out there in fantasy football. Where we start at the quarterback position, and still right there at the top is the big four that's been there all year: Kyler Murray, Patrick Mahomes, Aaron Rodgers, Russell Wilson. And you know what? Let's continue to throw in Justin Herbert in there too, because 80% is still very impressive for this young man so far this season. Mahomes has been right there. I mean, I watched him the other night, that Tyreek. Oh my gosh, the Tyreek with 200 yards in the first quarter. That was just disturbing. It reminded me of the Madden games that I've been playing because that's kind of how those games go. It's like, two bombs to Tyreek and Madden, and you got 200 yards and a couple touchdowns real quick. But, Aaron Rodgers, I think, still to me is the biggest surprise. I think he's a bigger, well, I shouldn't say that. I'd say he's almost as big a surprise as Justin Herbert being this good and this consistent. He was written off for dead. I just could not, in my mind, say that this was going to be him for a comeback. But boy, I guess if you put a chip on his shoulder and you draft a quarterback and say that it's not for him to be replaced soon, he certainly took it personal, and he is just devouring the NFL. And it's great if you drafted him in your fantasy leagues, but these guys have all been looking good so far this year. I have Mahomes in quite a few, no Rodgers, maybe one Murray, one Wilson. Definitely no Justin Herbert. Definitely didn't think he would be something other than maybe a dynasty league guy. Any of these guys that you invested in and helping you move along?
Actually, the thing is when you're in so many leagues, it's hard to not have any of these guys. I have Kyler Murray on both Kings Classic teams, which he was who I was referring to earlier. When you get
Oh, there you go. Right.
7.5 points out of your starting quarterback that you're consistently getting 25 to 30 out of, not going to
Mm-hmm.
help you out too much. So he picked a
Right.
bad time to have that non-clutch game in there.
Sure.
But hopefully we can rebound from that. I do have Mahomes. I have Mahomes in the SiriusXM Dynasty League. He and Tyreek Hill scored exactly, or actually a little bit more than 50% of my points between the two of them. So that took me to a win this week. Actually, I think that's what got me into playoffs this week as well. If I read the format correctly, I've
Nice.
got Aaron Rodgers, Russell Wilson. Actually, the next four, I've actually got those guys in a couple of two quarterback leagues that I play in. I actually have
Mm-hmm.
Herbert and Watson in a super flex league, and I think I have an 8-3 record in there, so it's helping me out there. But I have these guys across the board, and I have them in some leagues that are a little bit more meaningful. But I think the guy I have the least amount of shares of probably is Aaron Rodgers, and he watched a little bit of the Packers Bears the other night, and I think one of the things that it looks to me like Aaron Rodgers, it looks like he's having fun playing. I think that was something
Right.
that kind of went away the last couple of years, and I also got to give a little credit to Matt LaFleur as well. I think that relationship he's got with Matt LaFleur, I think obviously it's pretty plain to see that him and Mike McCarthy, that wasn't working too well, and I think it might have
Mm-hmm.
been almost kind of the same situation that we had in New England with Belichick and Tom Brady. I think it just kind of ran its course, and somebody needs to move on, and usually it's the head coach that happens to. Brady moved on to Tampa Bay. Contract was
Or
up, a little different
or
scenario
say
there,
or
but
Bill O'Brien and Deshaun Watson.
yeah, right.
That
So
might be fun.
it's cool to see Aaron Rodgers enjoying the game again. They have all kind of weapons. Devontae Adams has looked so good this season when he's
Mm-hmm.
been healthy. That's contributed a lot to it. And, you have guys like Marquez Valdez-Scantling, hopping in there and being a solid number two. Alan Lazard's finally back as well. So he's got something he hasn't had in the past, I think, in a couple of those supporting receivers that he's been lacking. Robert Tunyon's in there as well, my guy from Indiana State. So
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot to like about that team. Offensive line's played pretty well. They've got running backs. He's got a stocked arsenal. There's really no reason that he shouldn't be playing the way he's playing.
Right, right. But the thing was, he had that last year, but it just didn't seem like
Yeah.
they were allowing him to have fun. They were running the ball more. The
Mhm.
defense was playing well. They were winning football games, so he didn't need to throw the ball as much. This year, I think he's throwing the ball on purpose, just because he wants to, and he wants to have fun. And fun is throwing touchdowns with winning, so he's doing that. So definitely, so far, a good year for that. I mean, after that, though, the quarterbacks this year back to kind of normal for the inconsistency. I mean, we've got Deshaun Watson at 73%. Again, I think I talked about this last week's show. Watson has, in the last, since O'Brien has left, he's like, 5 of 6, averaging about 25 points a week, definitely playing at a whole different level than he was with O'Brien involved. So, now he loses Will Fuller. We'll get to him when we get to the wide receivers. That's going to hurt some. Brandon Cooks and those guys are going to have to pick it up a notch. So we'll see how well that goes. The rest of this group, I mean, there's definitely a lot of guys in the top 10, even top 12 in fantasy points. But man, I mean, here's six. I'm going to say 6 guys. Number 4, Josh Allen, 4th in total points. Brady, 7th. Tannehill, 9th. Roethlisberger, 10th. Ryan is 11th, and Carson Wentz is 12th. All of those guys are between 45 and 58% consistent. Just not a good year for consistency at quarterbacks. If you don't have those top 5 or 6 guys, you are really struggling this year. And again, injuries, not only to maybe the players themselves, for some, but the injuries to the offensive line, to the wide receivers, to the tight ends, to the running backs. I mean, there's just been no consistency in the lineups for a lot of these teams, and that's got to be hurting these quarterbacks. Am I right?
It has to be. I mean, when you rely on guys week in and week out to be there, and like we've talked, for example, about Tom Brady. He's been without Chris Godwin. Mike Evans finally came alive a little bit last week, but Mike
Right.
Evans has been wildly inconsistent. As we've seen, Antonio Brown's a wild card.
Mm-hmm.
Josh Allen's been without John Brown for a couple different times this year.
Oh, and he's on
So
IR now, right?
okay, so so
Yeah.
he's out even longer. Right? So it's got to be something with that, but it seems like too. I know in the case of Josh Allen, he had all those big games up front, and he's kind of come back down to earth. Now, he's had some games where he's thrown for 300 yards, threw for 415 against Seattle. So he's had a couple big games in there. But like last week, for example, when you're used to getting that big production from him and he goes for $157 and a touchdown, it's really letting you down, and he's not going to get that clutch game for you. So I think it's a matter of, too, I think, I don't know if it's defense is figuring guys out or maybe the schedule's gotten a little bit tougher, but it just seems like these guys' beginnings of their seasons, a couple of them were just so top heavy, and you just get spoiled by that production. But you got to think, okay, Josh Allen's not going to throw for 415 yards and 4 scores and run for another 50 yards every single week. So you got to kind of temper your expectations, but it's hard to do that when you're getting that super good production.
Right. Well, and the other thing you have to think of, too, with Josh Allen and some of these other quarterbacks is here comes December, guys. And December in Buffalo is not a place for quarterbacks to be throwing the ball a lot. Well, now the running might help a lot because he'll be able to run the ball a little bit more. But, yeah, it's going to be some rough weather.
And if you are a Josh Allen owner, hate to be the bearer of bad news, you probably know this already, but coming up, just in time for the playoffs, at San Francisco and Pittsburgh at home.
Oof. Yeah, that's rough.
Yuck.
That's rough. All right, so let's move on to the running back position. And, boy, for all you poor Alvin Kamara owners, how many fantasy points did Kamara get this week? Did he get more than 10? I don't even know if he got that many. He might have got like 5. Every time I saw the highlights, Taysom Hill's running the ball in from the 2.
Well, here's what I do know. If you had Latavius Murray, I know he went for $125 and a score and scored you some solid points. That's where all the production went.
So that's why I wondered if maybe Kamara just was not healthy and they just kind of saved him because they knew they were playing Denver, who pulled some hot dog vendor out of the stands to play quarterback. My favorite was when they wanted to get their assistant coach to play and they wouldn't let him because he was a former quarterback in college.
Such a sad situation.
Yeah, it really was. It really felt bad. So, that was a tough week for Yavin. I really didn't have a lot of Kamara. Usually if I had top 4 or 5 pick, I, had a, Zeke or, which was probably stupid. I wish I'd taken Kamara now. So that's usually what happened. Or, 5 or 6. I may have Kamara in a couple of leagues, but not too many. He's been great all year until now. I mean, still first in total points, but this past week hurt him. Dalvin Cook, still perfect, 100%. So is McCaffrey, 100%, but only 3 for 3 because he can't stay healthy to save his life. James Robinson, definitely, one of our favorites this year, is just that out of nowhere guy. We haven't seen a guy like this in a while. 91%, fourth in total points, and he's just absolutely outstanding. He's been great. Aaron Jones, 89%. Derrick Henry and Clyde Hilaire, 82%. And Mostert at 80%, 4 out of 5. I mean, obviously he hasn't been healthy, but certainly has proven when he's on the field, he's scoring some points for you. Of these guys, I have Cook in a few leagues. Henry, I mean, obviously no James Robinson. Didn't even know this guy was. Obviously, most didn't. I didn't get lucky enough to have a high waiver wire pick, but I think you have Robinson in a few leagues, aren't you? Saving you?
I actually do not. I was not able to get him anywhere. Didn't bid enough for him in any of my fab leagues.
Right.
And I'm kind of with you on here too. I don't have, I think, any of these guys. First guy on this list I have is Raheem Mostert, and like you said, he's 4 out of 5.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't get any of them. Kamara went right before I picked in King's Classic Snake, so I ended up getting Zeke Elliott. We all know how that's working out.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, so no, don't have any of these guys helping me, and don't I wish I did.
Yeah, and it's interesting. I kind of, as I was setting my lineup this week, and I was so happy to be putting in Mostert back into my lineups, Austin Eckler back into my lineups, Chris Carson back into my lineups. My teams did so much better this week. It felt so good. The sad part is I looked at it's week 12 and I'm, 4-7 because these guys were not healthy for the last 6 weeks or 7 weeks. And so that was obviously killing me. But boy, it was good to at least see them produce and know that, again, I'm glad I drafted them, but And obviously the injuries really killed me this year. As we move on down the list, Antonio Gibson, boy, he's been really picking it up in Washington. The Redskins have looked, pretty good. At least Gibson and McLaurin. Um, Again, no, I had, I took Bryce Love in the Kings Classic because I thought that was supposed to be the guy. That didn't work out. Nick Chubb, is coming back nicely from his injury, putting up some nice games. He'll definitely be a top 5 pick next year as well. Kenyon Drake has looked good. James Conner had COVID, so he didn't get to play today. So that, for those of you who had James Conner in some leagues, that certainly hurt. But as you go down the list, I mean, I think what I see mostly out of the running backs is the guys we've talked about already, the Elliott's, the Hunts, the Sanders, the Jonathan Taylors, the Montgomerys, the David Johnsons, Ronald Jones, James White, all of these guys who, have had consistency in the past, and due to either injuries of themselves, the offensive line, players around them, Zeke with Dak Prescott, it's just been a rough year for running back position to get any consistency. And again, almost like the quarterback position, if you have one of those top 6 to 8 that we talked about earlier, you're in good shape. If you don't, man, you're struggling. And I know how a lot of my teams are going. Ronald Jones has looked great in some games, but you know how Bruce Arians is. The next game I think he dropped a pass or missed a block on a blitz, got taken out. Fournette plays for the next 2 quarters. It's what you deal with guys like that. These guys all affecting your teams as well.
Well, Ronald Jones, being down here in South Florida, you see Tampa play a little bit more, and he's had a little bit of issue with fumbling the ball as well, too. Yeah. So obviously in a Bruce Arians offense, that's not going to cut it. Wanted to add in real quick about Antonio Gibson. He's a guy that I have in a couple leagues, and touchdowns. He's got 11 rushing touchdowns on the season, and he's scored in 5 straight. In 2 out of the last 3 games, he's got more than 1 touchdown as well. So he's been really saving you there. Didn't cost you a whole lot either. He's probably slotted in there as your RB2 for sure. Mm-hmm. So he could even be, if you got these guys like Zeke Elliott and Miles Sanders and these guys that are further down, he might even be your RB1 at this point. But I'm going to zero in on Zeke Elliott. Ever since Dak went down, I don't know if it's a matter of, and of course the Cowboys offensive line has kind of been a mess as the season's gone on as well. So that's definitely impacted him. But the times I've seen Zeke Elliott play, I don't know if he's not healthy or he just doesn't care, but he just does not look like he's running the ball hard, just does not look like he's giving it his all. And I don't know, like I said, if, once Dak went down, he said, what, that's the season, it's kind of over with. So, he's a guy that most likely was your 3rd pick in your draft. Like I said, I got him at number 4. He, I think, got me 2.9 points last week. So not going to do a whole lot when your RB1, your first-round pick, is getting you 2.9 points. So I haven't looked at their schedule. I'm not real optimistic about him the rest of the way, so I'm hoping some of these other guys that I have lower down, I can mix and match and make up a little bit for it. But, yeah, guys like, of course, David Johnson's on IR. Melvin Gordon has been super disappointing. I didn't expect a ton out of him. Another guy, David Montgomery, has been super disappointing as well. And I know he's had some, I don't know if he had, I can't remember if it was a concussion or an ankle or what it was, but he missed a game or 2. Just, these guys that you picked that you thought you were going to get solid production out of that you really didn't have a whole lot standing in their way aren't really panning out like you thought they would. Especially, I thought when Tariq Cohen went down, David Montgomery was going to have a field day and lead that offense, and it's been everything but that.
And again, I think you and I had these conversations many times this past couple of weeks. When Matt Patricia got fired and Bill O'Brien's been fired, and I said Matt Nagy needs to be the next one to go. It just seems like I don't understand why Montgomery just can't seem to get it going. And I wonder if it's kind of like the Adam Gases of the world, where if Montgomery could go somewhere else with a different coach, that he wouldn't explode like Kenyon Drake or those kind of players that when they go somewhere else, all of a sudden they seem to have talent when they didn't before. So it'd be interesting. I mean, I don't know what kind of contract he's under there, but I really think it would be best if he got out of there.
Uh-huh.
We'll just have to wait and see. All right, let's move on to the wide receiver position. And I've said this for a number of weeks now. I think if any position has at least kind of maintained some integrity, consistency, whatever words you want to use, I feel like the wide receivers have done that for our teams this year. The guys that are supposed to be doing well are doing well. There's a few stragglers, there's no question about it. They're a little bit down but they weren't like super high draft picks. I mean, Curtis Samuel, DJ Moore, DJ Chark, Marvin Jones, Jarvis Landry, some of these guys, I mean, certainly well below their averages consistency wise. But it wasn't like they were, top 20 picks. DJ Moore might have been. But I really wasn't that into DJ Moore because of Teddy Bridgewater and company anyway. And the amazing thing is that the guy that has done super well in Carolina is not DJ Moore, but Robbie Anderson. So that's probably the biggest surprise out of all of us. But I got to talk about my guy, our favorite player, one of our favorite players outside of the fantasy locus. If you go back to last week's show, and for those of you out there keeping, scoring at home, please do so, because I want to make sure you hear what I said last week when we were talking about Will Fuller. And I said specifically to David, I said, there is something up with Will Fuller this year. He's he's played almost 11 weeks. He's healthy. He's consistent. There's something going on. And I said, I'm just waiting for that to crash and him to get injured. Well, he didn't get injured. What we found out is he's doing performance-enhancing drugs. Now, he says it's something that was doctor prescribed and he didn't know it was illegal and blah, 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 blah. We've all heard this. But it finally, that's it. I knew it. This bastard's been cheating. That's why he's been healthy all year. So anyway, I don't know what the whole story is. And I'm sure we'll never know. But we now know why Will Fuller's been so damn consistent and so damn healthy this year. I knew something had to be up, and it was proven. It's right up there with the monoliths for the week, for the aliens coming in and taking over. So Will Fuller's out for the rest of the year, as I mentioned earlier. So he's out. It's a 6-week suspension, which is basically the rest of the year. I don't know. Well, Houston probably didn't have a chance at the playoffs anyway, right?
I doubt it.
I doubt it. So, he might have been eligible to play in the playoffs. I don't know for sure. But he was 9 out of 11, 82%, eighth in total points. Like I said, huge shock to me, and you as well, I know, because certainly Fuller's never proven any kind of consistency. But Tyreek right to the top, 91%. Terry McLaurin, I mean, this is the guy. Next year he might even be a wide receiver one for me when I do the list. If not, it'll definitely be top 15, top 20 for sure. He just has proven that this guy is just a special talent. I've brought up this kind of comparison last couple of weeks, is that he is DeAndre Hopkins when DeAndre Hopkins was at Houston before Deshaun Watson, where it didn't matter who was quarterbacking. I can't even tell you all the different names and people that were there in Houston back before Deshaun, but it didn't matter because Hopkins was 100% consistent or 90% consistent, and Terry McLaurin is that person right now, and he's certainly going to be high on our list going into next year when we do the 2021 consistency guide. But I didn't draft him. I just felt with Dwayne Haskins that, teams were going to focus on stopping McLaurin, and Haskins was going to be able to help him out. But, man, he's proven me wrong and many others, I'm sure. But your thoughts on McLaurin?
Terry Targets, baby. They call him that for a reason. And, it is remarkable what he's doing with the lack of quarterback play that they have, and that just speaks to how good he really is.
Yeah.
And you mentioned DeAndre Hopkins playing with the likes of, let's go down memory lane a little bit. Sage Rosenfels, Brian Hoyer.
Oof.
Okay. Just to name a few. I won't go too further down the line because I don't want to make anybody out there sick, especially Colby Conway. But he's got to be creeping into that first round range. And I've actually, we're not the only people that have kind of hopped on that bandwagon. I've seen a lot of that on Twitter. people say, kind of saying, why not Terry McLaurin towards the back half of that first round? And I got to
Mm-hmm.
say, I'm kind of there with you. If you were lucky enough to get him in a dynasty, especially, man, you probably got him for absolutely nothing. And
Oh,
it's
right.
very possible that you could have Terry McLaurin and DK Metcalf in a dynasty, and you're set at wide
Mm.
receiver first two spots for the next probably 8 to 10 years.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Definitely, and like you said, he is definitely going to he'll definitely be a guy next year. I'll probably be drafting a little bit more of than I have in the past. As you mentioned, Devontae Adams, hell of a year. DK Metcalf, Keenan Allen, I think has been a pleasant surprise, but I think really he's been the product of Justin Herbert. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, I didn't have him ranked as high as I normally used to have him because of, Tyrod Taylor, and we didn't know what to expect out of Herbert at quarterback as a rookie. But we thought, well, Tyrod Taylor at least will throw him the ball enough. But I think I had him maybe outside of the wide receiver one, probably 14th or 15th, I want to say, just guessing. But he's certainly, again, a target monster, just like McLaurin is. Herbert certainly loves him and is throwing to him quite often. Stephon Diggs, fifth and total. I think he might be a bigger surprise than Allen. I just didn't know if Diggs could, be mentally strong enough to be able to be a solid number one wide receiver. I just felt like his immaturity in Minnesota when he used to bitch and moan about him and, Thielen have to share targets, but he has been a very, very well behaved student this year, and certainly has proven worthy for everybody who drafted him. Amari Cooper being consistent, that's definitely a 2020 thing. We never see that, and he's done a pretty nice job even after Dak has went down, which has been pretty impressive. So, definitely hats off to Amari. The interesting thing is this year he's very consistent and not scoring the points.
Mm-hmm.
In the past, he would be top 10 in points, but he'd be 50, 60% consistent. This year, 17th in points, and he's played 11 games, 82% consistent. Definitely a change for him, but definitely a change for the better, and certainly might even be worthy of us liking him heading into next year. We'll have to wait and see. Um, as we go down the list, we won't go through all of these. Any guys jump out at you of, kind of being surprises? And we talked about Robbie Anderson a little bit. Corey Davis has been, we're kind of, I said we're going to have a new award this year called the Devontae Parker Memorial Award for those who come back from the dead like Parker did last year. Corey Davis looks like it's a runaway winner for this one this year. So any more thoughts on some of these other guys?
Well, a couple guys that I wanted to highlight that I think are doing the same thing that Terry McLaurin is doing, and that's giving you consistency, giving you production without solid quarterback play. Number one is Allen Robinson. Allen Robinson should be paid a nice little salary. He leaves Chicago after this season because I think he's only 27 years old. The guy
Right.
catches everything. He gets open. He's going to be a key free agent. I think there's going to be a lot of teams interested in him. But also, we'll go down a little bit further. T. Higgins is a guy that's kind of
Mm-hmm.
doing the same thing. Not that we don't like Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow's a rookie. We know how
Right.
we feel about rookies on the show, or how you feel about rookies specifically,
Yeah.
Mr. Lung. And Joe Burrow was solid before he went down, but now he's got I don't even remember who it was that started at quarterback. Brandon Allen maybe was the guy that started
Yeah, I
most of
think
the
so. Because I thought it would
okay.
be Ryan Finley, and they wouldn't even let him play.
Okay, so there you go. So T. Higgins is another guy too. Early
Mhm.
second round picks that kind of started to come on a little bit, but like we said, those rookie quarterbacks a little bit inconsistent. He's a guy that you definitely want to watch as well. Go a little bit further down the list. Julio Jones. I got to say, I've loved watching Julio Jones. I've loved having him on my
Mhm.
teams in the past. This is the last year that I think I draft Julio Jones.
Yeah.
I can't do the injuries anymore. I can't do the inconsistency anymore. So far down this list, all the way down here at 63% consistent, 31 in total points. And you love to watch him. You love what the guy stands for. He plays through injury, but man, he's really
Mhm.
been nicked up this year. And like I said on that auction team I have, him. He's been my wide receiver one. I went all out for him and Hopkins, and when they're both on, man, it's a great duo. But he's been out more games than I can count, more games than I can recover from. So you got to go all the way down here to number 29, number 30, to even see him on this list. That's not good for a
Yeah.
guy that you probably drafted in the second round.
Right. And then there's also some guys that, just have not had the consistency. Tyler Lockett, he's seventh in total points. He's had some great weeks. I think he was even number one week, but 55% consistency. I mean, the guy to have is obviously Metcalf. Lockett putting up some points, but not putting up the consistency to go along with it. We talked about DJ Moore, Landry. Even with Beckham going down, Landry's still not getting it. But then that offense is all based on running the ball. And you know what? The Browns are 8-3. So I can't complain. I'm perfectly fine with it. But if you're a Jarvis Landry owner, that's going to be some troubles. But, at this point, I'm going more for the Browns winning and getting to the playoffs, which looks like they might have a pretty good shot at this point. So we're gonna keep that in our hip pocket for now.
And I think the thing that benefits them too, nobody's talking about it.
Right.
Nobody's saying a word. So I think they just need to keep flying under the radar, because we all know when we get that Browns hype machine going, what happens? It usually breaks down at some point.
Right. Well, and the other thing is what everybody's focused on in the AFC North is the Steelers being perfect. Mm-hmm. So, as long as they continue to be 11-0, it's all about the Steelers. So everybody's focused on that. Can the Steelers go undefeated? Can they go all the way? Are they a Super Bowl team? I mean, I watched them today a little bit against the Ravens. They're okay. Again, they're playing the Ravens with RG3 at quarterback, not Lamar Jackson. And they struggled to win that. So, I think they pulled it out and kind of opened it up at the end, but, I don't see them as definitely not going undefeated, but hey, this year you just never know. Stranger things have happened. A lot of strange things have happened. So we'll see how that all ends up. All right, let's finish it off here with the tight end position. And there are two, and then that's it. That's about all. Kelsey, first in total points. I want to talk about consistency and the difference in points, because I'll get this question every once in a while, and boy, this is a perfect example. So here's an interesting scenario. We've got two guys at 91% consistency. Travis Kelce, TJ Hawkinson. Travis Kelce has scored 213 points. TJ Hawkinson, who is third overall, I have at 128 points. He is 85 points behind, and yet he's still in third place. And he's still 91% consistent. And I know what people are saying out there, Bob, how does this work? Well, if you're new to the game, we'll explain it this way. There is what's called a clutch factor. There is a calculated figure for each position based on 12 teams. And the clutch factor is the number of points that the average top 12 tight end will be over to earn that. For that, the clutch factor so far this year for tight ends is about 8.5 points. So if they get 9 or more, let's say 8.5 or more, they earn a clutch game. Now, Hawkinson's played 11 games, 128 points. So what he's basically doing is he's scoring about 9 to 10 points a week, maybe 11, and that's it. He's not scoring 15 or 20. He's not scoring 5. He's scoring about 10 to 12 a week. And that's where he's come up with the 128 points, and yet has had 10 clutch games. So, if he hits 8.5 every week, that's 85 points. So he's 40 over that. So he's, again, about 12.8 fantasy points a week. That's where he's coming up with the consistency, but not scoring the Travis Kelce points. So there's your kind of lesson in consistency. Hawkinson's still helping your team, certainly not helping at the level of Travis Kelce, but he's at least there for you every week, and that's what we talk about. That's what we're promoting with those two guys. After that, again, it gets a little bit ugly. We've got some people in the 64 to 67% range. George Kittle's one of them, obviously out for the rest of the year, so he's not helping you much. But the rest of these guys are helping you. Darren Waller, Hunter Henry, Jonnu Smith, Hayden Hurst, Evan Ingram. Ingram's made a nice comeback. He was really down there for a while. They're second, sixth, seventh, 10th, and 11th in total points. So all of these guys have been solid for you. Not great. They're not Kelsey. They're not Hawkinson. But they've been solid for you. If you've got one of these four, and I have Waller and Henry and Ingram on most of my teams, one of the three. So they've been helping me out. That's one thing I have not had too much of an issue. Again, they're not doing great. They're not setting the world on fire, but they're being good enough to keep my teams in check, at least from a tight end standpoint. Ron, how are your tight ends doing, and where are they at in this list?
Well, first of all, I want to attribute that Evan Engram solid play to that surging Giants 4-7 division leading record. They are
Absolutely.
coming on like gangbusters, baby. So that's
right.
what we gotta look at there. They've been coming together at the right time. So I'm looking down the list here, and the thing about TJ Hawkinson too is that illustrates, like you said before, that illustrates perfectly what he's doing. But if you're starting TJ Hawkinson in your league, you probably waited a little while on tight end, and that's paying off for you because you're getting that consistent production. You didn't feel like you wanted to spend that number 1 or number 2 pick on Travis Kelce. You waited a little bit. You skipped on George Kittle because he's hurt quite a bit. Darren Waller's a little too expensive for you. You waited a little while. It's paying off for you with what we said, what we preach here with that consistency stuff. So that said, but that difference in points is amazing. I don't know if we've ever had one between 1 and 3 like that big since we've been doing this. Darren Waller's another guy that laid an egg for me last week. Had Atlanta, who's given up the most fantasy points to the tight end, and I think he had maybe 4 points. I don't really know what happened with the Raiders last week. Oh, man, another one I put on that list that let me down. But other than last week, Darren Waller has been huge. Yet again, trails Travis Kelce quite a bit. Love to see my guy Robert Tonyan, mentioned him earlier.
Go down the list. Total points, buddy.
Yeah, I mean that's love to see that 55% consistent. Like to see that consistency bump up a little bit, but he's been getting it done. But honestly, a lot of leagues, it's been a lot of mixing and matching. I've been starting a lot of spot starting Eric Ebron. I've been spot starting Logan Thomas. I've been spot starting Dalton Schultz a couple places. The no offense, Jared Cooks of the world. I think if you missed out on any of those, top 1 or maybe the top 3 or 4 guys that we have in our consistency rankings, I think that's what you've been doing as well. You've been playing those matchups, and for the most part, they've been paying off. Like for example, last week I sent you guys a message over the weekend. I've never been so stoked about Tyler Eifert scoring a touchdown in my lifetime than I was. That was the highlight of my weekend. Everybody else was stoked about Tyreek Hill. I was stoked at the fact that Tyler Eifert, I plucked him off waivers, had to start him for Mark Andrews because I wasn't sure what was going to happen, and he got me a touchdown. That made my week, even though I got my ass kicked in that league.
Nice. I would think probably the most disappointing guy, again, it wasn't a guy that we promoted in the consistency guide, or even though he had a great second half last season consistency wise, and that was Tyler Higbee. Man, what a disaster this year has been for him. Not that the Rams offense as a whole has been all that great, but I just thought that they would use him more and still keep him involved. Robert Woods, Cooper Kupp, obviously doing what they do. But I just felt like Higbee would be that third receiver, not Josh Reynolds, but 19th in total points, 20% consistency. I mean, when you're down below Tyler Kroft and, Donald Parham and David Njoku and Kyle Rudolph and some of these guys, that's rough. I mean, especially since he was probably drafted, I'd say probably 6th, 7th round. I mean, he was in there with the Ingrams and Hunter Henrys and those kind of guys. I mean, I didn't draft him. Like I said, I was going for those guys. But, man, what a rough year for Tyler Higbee.
Yeah, and the thing about Tyler Higbee is if you plucked him off waivers last year, he might have been a league winner for you. He came up big towards the end of the season last year and rode that, like you said, right into this draft season, was right there in that, that mid to, that mid-level range. And, yeah, he's probably a guy that you passed on to waivers probably quite a few weeks ago, and you're kind of with the rest of us that waited a little bit on tight end in most leagues. You're mixing and matching just like the rest of us are with the Tyler Eiferts of the world.
Yeah, I think the most difficult thing heading into the 2021 Fantasy Football Consistency Guide will be who's going to be in the top 12 rankings at tight end. Because I look at this group and I go, Okay. I mean, Eric Ebron is ninth. Tanyan is fourth. Andrews is fifth. We assume he'll get it back together. I mean, Gronkowski's eighth. Um, Dalton Schultz is 12th. Um, Granted, I know there's some guys that are hurt. Ertz will come back. But man, putting together a top 12 and feeling good about that top 12. If you don't get again, you know, really make sure you pay attention to the guy because we're going to be doing some deep, deep research on, tight ends. I'm still not sold 100% on TJ Hawkinson just because I think Hawkinson's getting the balls more because Galladay hasn't been in there for 6 weeks. So he's really the number two receiver after Marvin Jones, and that's not saying much. If Galladay's healthy and Jones is healthy, and let's say Detroit gets a good wide receiver in the draft, is Hawkinson still going to be the guy? Is he still going to see the ball that much? That would be my concern. I feel like he's a product of Galladay not being there, not necessarily a product of just him being. I mean, I'm not saying he's not a good tight end. I'm just saying they didn't use him at all last year when Galladay and Jones and everybody was healthy. So, is he really the guy we can count on? I mean, again, we see the consistency numbers, but sometimes we have to look deeper than the numbers and go, why, is it something repeatable? So it's going to be interesting heading into next year for that one. So we'll break down the numbers. We'll bring it to you in the guide. Obviously, they're later in the spring, but certainly something going to be a little bit tough to do. So, all right. Well, Ron, thanks again for good to have you back, buddy. And why don't you tell everybody what you're up to on the weekends with the consistently cashing and stuff.
Yeah, consistently cashing. We've kind of turned the corner a little bit. Last week I did cash. I did something I never do, and that's cash on DK and not on FanDuel, which is very strange for me. But and shout to our guy Colby Conway because he had you Tyreek Hill in the article, and if you started him, you probably did pretty well for yourself. So kudos to our man Colby. Had him in that DK lineup, and it worked out for me. I think the week before that I cashed in both, so that's we're getting there. We're starting to put it together a little bit. Better late than never, I guess. So you can find me there. Article will be up this weekend. Last night on the baseball side of it, we're rolling in, getting close to the fantasy football playoffs. So that means it's going to be time to start getting that fantasy baseball stuff cranked up and ready to go. And myself and my man Van Lee last night, we did record an episode of the Nasty Cast, just a short little episode to kind of talk a little bit of baseball free agency and kind of talk about our plan heading into the first of the year. So cool. Check that out wherever you get any of your podcast goodness at, and we'll kind of fill you in on what's coming up there. And like I said, obviously over at BigGuyFantasySports.com and at The Real Made on Twitter.
Beautiful. All right. As always, you can find the stuff here on Big Guy Fantasy Sports. The week in review will be coming up here over the next day or so. Now that the week 12 is finally over with, we'll get those articles out here Friday or Thursday or Friday. And obviously the prop bet consistency stuff will be coming with Colby and I this weekend and help you win some money at thrivefantasy.com. So as always, Ron, thanks for being here. Everybody have a great week. Take care. God bless. And we'll talk to you soon.